February 10th, 1901, Volume 4. Obedience has an extremely long sight, while love of self is very much short-sighted. As my adorable Jesus continued to come, he made himself seen with eyes refulgent with most vivid and most pure light. I was enchanted and surprised before that dazzling light, and Jesus, on seeing me so enchanted and speechless, said to me, "My beloved, obedience has an extremely long sight, and surpasses the very light of the sun in beauty and in sharpness. In the same way, love of self is very much short-sighted, so much so that it cannot take a step without tripping. And do not believe that this extremely long sight is possessed by those souls who go on always disturbed and in scrupulousness. Rather, this is a net that love of self weaves around them, which, being very short-sighted, makes them fall first, and then provokes in them 1,000 disturbances and scruples. And what they have detested today with so many scruples and fears, they fall into again tomorrow, to the point that their living is reduced to being always immersed in this artificious net which love of self knows well how to weave around them. This, unlike the extremely long sight of obedience, which is killer of the love of self. Her sight is so very long and clear that immediately she foresees where she might slip, and with generous heart she abstains from it and enjoys the holy freedom of the children of God. And just as darkness draws more darkness, so does light draw more light. And this light arrives at drawing to itself the light of the Word, and uniting together, they weave the light of all virtues. Surprised on hearing this, I said, "Lord, what are you saying? To me it seems that that scrupulous way of living is sanctity." And he, with a more serious tone, added, "On the contrary, I tell you that this is the true mark of obedience, while that is the true mark of love of self, and that way of living moves me more to indignation than to love. In fact, when it is the light of truth that allows one to see one's fault, be it even the slightest, there should be some emendation. But since it is the short sight of the love of self, it does nothing but keep them oppressed, having no development on the path of true sanctity." February 10th, 2005, Volume 6. What the Contentments of the Soul Are. As I was in my usual state, I felt a discontentment about myself. But then when blessed Jesus came, I felt myself entering into such contentment that I said, "Ah, Lord, you alone are the true contentment." And he added, "And I say to you that the first contentment of the soul is God alone. The second contentment is when the soul, within herself and outside of herself, looks at nothing but God. The third is when, as the soul finds herself in this divine sphere, no created object, nor creatures, nor riches can break the divine image within her mind. In fact, the mind nourishes itself with what it thinks, and by looking at God alone, of the things of down here, she looks only at those that God wants, not bothering about anything else, and so she remains always in God. The fourth contentment is suffering for God, because in order for the soul and God now to maintain their conversation, now to be more intimately clasped together, now to prove their love to each other, God calls the soul, and the soul's answer. God draws near, and the soul embraces him. God gives her suffering, and the soul gladly suffers, or rather she desires to suffer more for love of him, so as to be able to say to him, "Do you see how I love you?" And this is the greatest of all contentments. February 10th, 1912, Volume 10, The sign in order to know whether one has left everything for God and has reached the point of operating and of loving everything divinely. Continuing in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus made himself seen for just a little, and he told me, "My daughter, when one leaves everything and operates for me, and loves everything divinely, all things are at his disposal. And the sign that one has left everything for me and has reached the point of operating and of loving everything divinely is that in operating, in speaking, in praying, in everything, he no longer finds hindrances, displeasures, contrasts, oppositions. Because in the face of this power of operating and of loving everything divinely, all lower their heads and dare not even breathe. In fact, I, benevolent Father, am always guarding the human heart, and in seeing it slip away from me, that is, operating and loving humanly, I put thorns, displeasures, bitternesses, which prick and embitter that human work in love, and the soul, on seeing herself pricked, realizes that that way of hers is not divine, so she enters into herself and acts differently. In fact, the pricks are the sentinels of the human heart, and they provide it with the eyes to be able to see who is the one who is moving her, whether God or the creature. On the other hand, when the soul leaves everything and operates and loves everything divinely, she enjoys my peace, and instead of having the sentinels and the eyes of the prickings, she has the sentinel of peace, which moves anything that can disturb her peace away from her, and the eyes of love, which put to flight and burn those who want to disturb her. Therefore they remain at peace with regard to that soul. They give her peace, and they place themselves at her disposal. It seems that the soul can say, "Nobody touch me, because I am divine, and I am fully of my sweet love, Jesus. Nobody dare to disturb my sweet rest with my highest good. And if you dare to, with the power of Jesus which is mine, I will put you to flight." It seems I have said much nonsense, but Jesus will certainly forgive me because I have done it to obey. It seems as if he assigns to me a written essay, and I, a little ignorant one and a child, don't have the ability to develop it. February 10th, 1919, Volume 12. Jesus asks Luisa whether she wants to live in his will, whether she wants to accept the office of second link with his humanity, and whether she wants to accept his love as her own, and his will as life. Continuing in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus came, and taking my hands in his own, he held them tightly, and with a majestic affability said to me, "My daughter, tell me, do you want to live in my will? Do you want to accept the office of second link with my humanity? Do you want to accept all my love as your own, my will as life, and the very pains which the divinity inflicted on my humanity, which were so many that my love feels the irresistible need not only to make them known, but to share them, as much as it is possible for a creature? I can share them and make them known only to one who lives in my will, all at the expense of my love. My daughter, it is my usual way to ask for the yes of the creature, to then operate freely with her." Jesus remained silent, as if he was waiting for my fiat. I was surprised, and I said, "My life, Jesus, your will is mine. You yourself unite them together and form one single fiat, so I will say yes together with you. I beg you to have mercy on me. My misery is great, and only because you want it I say, fiat, fiat. But oh, how annihilated and pulverized I felt in the abyss of my nothingness. more so, since this nothing was called to live in the all. So my sweet Jesus united the two wills together and impressed a fiat. My yes entered into the divine volition, and it seemed to be not a human, but a divine yes, because it had been pronounced in the will of Jesus. This yes in the divine will multiplied into many, for as many refusals as the creatures gave to my sweet Jesus. It made the most solemn reparations, and embraced everyone, as though wanting to bring everyone to Jesus, substituting for all. It was a yes which had the seal and the power of the divine volition, pronounced not out of fear, nor for interest of personal sanctity, but only to live in the will of Jesus, to run for the good of all, and to bring to Jesus divine glory, love, and reparations. My lovable Jesus seemed so happy with my yes that he said to me, "Now I want to adorn you and clothe you like me, so that you may come with me before the majesty of the Eternal One, to repeat my own office." So Jesus clothed me, as though identifying me with his humanity, and we found ourselves together before the Supreme Majesty. I don't know how to say it. This majesty was an inaccessible, immense, varied light of incomprehensible beauty, on which everything was dependent. I remained dissolved in it, and even the humanity of Jesus was little. Just to enter the air of this light was delightful, embellishing, but I don't know how to go on to explain. My sweet Jesus said, "Adore the uncreated power together with me in the immensity of my will, so that not I alone, but also another creature may adore in a divine manner, and in the name of all her brothers, of the generations of all centuries, the one who created everything, on whom all things are dependent." How beautiful it was to adore together with Jesus! We multiplied ourselves for all. We placed ourselves before the throne of the Eternal One, as though to defend him from those who would not recognize the eternal majesty, or would even insult it. And we ran for the good of all to make it known. We did other acts, Jesus and I together, but I feel that I don't know how to go on. My mind wavers and cannot lend me the right words. Therefore I will not go on. If Jesus wants, I will come back to this point. Then my sweet Jesus brought me back into myself, but my mind remained bound to an eternal point from which it could not move. Jesus, Jesus, help me to correspond to your graces. Help your little daughter. Help the little spark. February 10th, 1924, Volume 16. Necessity to write everything in these writings. The good they will produce. Indisputable purity, sanctity, and strength of the doctrine of the divine will. It will be as a new sun in the church, which will renew her, and therefore transform the face of the earth. Abandonment in the divine volition. I was thinking to myself about all that was written in these past days, and I said to myself that they were neither necessary nor serious things. I could have done without putting them on paper, but obedience wanted it so, and I had the duty to say Fiat also in this. But as I was thinking about this, my beloved Jesus told me, "Yet, my daughter, everything was necessary in order to make known how to live in my will. By not saying everything, some quality of how to live in it would be missing, and therefore the writings could not have the full effect of the living in my will. For example, on the abandonment of living in my will. If the soul did not live completely abandoned in my will, she would be like a person who lived in a sumptuous palace, and now leaned out of a window, now out of a balcony, now went down to the front door. In this way the poor one goes through the rooms just shortly or in passing, and therefore she knows nothing of the rule, of the work it takes, of the goods which are in there, of what she can take, and of what she can give. Who knows how many goods are there, and she knows nothing about it. Therefore she does not love as she should love, nor does she esteem that palace as it deserves. Now for the soul who lives in my will and is not completely abandoned in it, self-reflections, cares of herself, fears, disturbances, are nothing other than the windows, the balconies, the front doors that she forms in my will. And going out very often, she is forced to see and feel the miseries of human life. And since the miseries are her own property, while the riches of my will are mine, she becomes more attached to the miseries than to the riches, so she will not love nor enjoy the meaning of living in my will. And since she formed the main entrance, one day or another she will go out to live in the miserable hovel of her own will. See, then, how complete abandonment in me is necessary in order to live in my will. My will does not need the miseries of the human will. It wants the creature to live together with it, beautiful, just as she was delivered from its womb, without the miserable provision she made herself in the exile of life. Otherwise there would be disparity, which would bring sorrow to my will and unhappiness to the human will. Do you see how necessary it is to make them understand that complete abandonment is needed in order to live in my will? And you say it is not necessary to write about it? I feel compassion for you, because you do not see what I see, and that is why you take it lightly. Instead, in my all-seeingness, I see that these writings will be for my church as a new sun, which will rise in her midst, and men, attracted by its radiant light, will strive to transform themselves into this light and become spiritualized and divinized, and therefore, renewing the church, they will transform the face of the earth. The doctrine on my will is the purest, the most beautiful, not subject to any shadow of the material or of interest, either in the supernatural or in the natural order. Therefore, just like the sun, it will be the most penetrating, the most fecund, and the most welcomed and appreciated. And being light, it will make itself understood and will make its own way. It will not be subject to doubt or suspicions of error, and if some words will not be understood, it will be because of too much light, which, eclipsing the human intellect, will not allow them to understand the whole fullness of the truth. However, they will not find one word which is not true. At the most, they will not be able to comprehend it fully. Therefore, in view of the good which I see, I push you to neglect nothing in writing. One saying, one effect, one simile on my will can be like beneficial dew upon the souls, just as dew is beneficial on the plants after a day of burning sun, or like a pouring rain after long months of drought. You cannot understand all the good, the light, the strength contained in one word, but your Jesus knows it, and knows the ones whom it will serve and the good it will do. Now, as he was saying this, he showed me a table in the midst of the church, and all the writings on the divine will placed on it. Many venerable people surrounded that table and were transformed into light and divinized. And as they walked, they communicated that light to whomever they encountered. Then Jesus added, "You will see this great good from heaven, when the church will receive this celestial food, which will strengthen her and make her rise again to her full triumph. February 10th, 1929, Volume 25. One who lives in the divine will lends to it her nothingness emptied, that the Fiat uses as the space in which to exercise its creation. I was doing my round in the creation, to follow all the acts that the divine Fiat had done and is continuing in it. Not only this, but my poor mind kept tracing everything that the divine volition had done in Adam and in all generations before and after the redemption. It seemed to me that all the acts done by the divine will, both in creation and in creatures, were more than sons, that I was to follow, embrace, and make my own. And even though I was doing that, my poor heart could not help feeling the tortures of the privation of my highest good, Jesus. And he, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, courage! In one who lives in my divine will and follows its acts, my Fiat continues its creation, and in each of its acts that she follows, it assumes the attitude of forming its creations. And only when it sees all of its acts in the soul who lives in it, all lined up and ordered, like a new creation, and therefore a new heaven, a new sun, a sea more beautiful, a flowering more surprising, then is my divine Fiat content. And then, since the act of creating man was the most beautiful, the most tender, done in an ardor of love, the most intense, it wants to repeat over the creature who lives in my volition the acts that we did in the act of creating man. And oh, how my Fiat puts itself in feast in repeating its acts, because only in one who lives in it can it have its act of always creating things that it has done as well as new things. In fact, the soul lends to it her nothingness emptied, that my volition uses as the space in order to create what it wants, almost as it used the void of the universe in order to extend the heavens, to create the sun, to put boundaries to the sea, so that the earth might form its beautiful flowerings. And this is the reason why you go around in the acts of my Fiat, and as though many waves of light pass through your mind, in which you follow and feel, impressed into yourself, like many scenes, the creation, man in the act of being created, the Queen of Heaven in the act of being conceived, the Word descending, and many more acts done by my will. It is the power of my creating Fiat that wants to always do, always give, without ever ceasing. Therefore be attentive, for this is about something too great, no less than your having to remain in the act of undergoing the continuous act of my creating will. It will feel it has not completed its work in you if it does not see all of its acts enclosed in your soul, has the attestation and triumph of its reigning in you. Therefore, all its attention is in looking at whether all of its acts have life in you. And do you know how these acts are created in you? As for you, by calling them, recognizing them, and loving them. And my volition, by pronouncing its Fiat over your call and over your love, forms the life of its act in you. And the continuity of its work in you is such that it does not stop even in seeing you tortured by the pain of my privation, because it has much to do, and therefore it moves on. And I let it do so, because you and I must give primacy to our volition in everything, for the just triumph of its cause, and to give it the field in order to form its kingdom. February 10th, 1932, Volume 30, Labor of God in the Soul Who Lives in the Divine Will. Harmony between God and the creature. Look out of Jesus in order to have the company of the creature in his works. My sweet Jesus, with his enrapturing strength, always draws me into his adorable will, in order to let me go through the multiplicity of his works, that it seems that they await me, in order to give me something more of what they have given me. And I remained surprised by so much divine goodness and liberality. And, beloved Jesus, in order to infuse in me greater love and desire to follow the acts of the divine will, said to me, "Blessed daughter of my volition, every time you elevate yourself in it in order to unite yourself to each act that it has done, and to unite its to yours, the divine act rises and gives you a degree of grace, of love, of sanctity, a degree of divine life and glory. These degrees united together form the necessary substance in order to form the divine life in the creature. Some form the heartbeat, some the breath, some the word, some the eye, some the beauty, some the sanctity of God in the depth of the soul. Our acts rise as the creature approaches in order to give what they possess. They await her with anxiety in order to place themselves in the attitude of rising, so as to form their divine outpourings, in order to deposit themselves and repeat their acts in her. In fact, one who unites herself with the acts of our divine will gives us the occasion of letting us labor. But in order to do what? To form our life with our work in the creature. You must know that the creature, by elevating herself in our divine will, leaves everything and reduces herself into her nothingness. This nothing recognizes her Creator, and the Creator recognizes the nothing that he put forth to the light, not the nothing encumbered with things that do not pertain to him. No. And finding nothing, he fills it with the all. This is what it means to live in my will, emptying oneself of everything, nimbly, agilely, flying into the bosom of the Celestial Father, in order that this nothing receives the life of he who created her. In addition to this, our will is our life and our food, and since we have no need of material foods, so it gives us the food of its holy works. And as the creature is one of our works, we want to find in her our will as life, so that not only she, but all her works serve as food for us, and we, in exchange, give her our food. This feeding each other the same foods forms the harmony between her and God. This harmony produces peace, communication of goods, inseparability. It seems that the divine breath breathes in the creature, and that of hers in God, and they unite themselves so much as to feel as if the breath of one were as if it were one alone with the other. Therefore harmonies of will, harmonies of love, of work, occur. We feel that breath that we put forth in the creation of man, that he cut off by doing his will, retied again in the creature. Our will has the virtue and office of regenerating in him what he had lost through sin, and of reordering him as he came forth from our creative hands. After this I was going around in the works of creation and redemption, and my sovereign Jesus added, "My daughter, our works suffer isolation if they are not recognized as works done for love of creatures, because there was no other purpose in making so many marvelous works in creation than to give her so many attestations of love. We have no need of anything. Everything was done with an intense love for them. Now, if this love of ours does not become recognized in each created thing, our works remain alone, without cortege, without honors, and as separate from the creatures. So the sky, the sun, and other created things are alone. What I did in redemption, my works, my pains, my tears, and all the rest, are isolated." Now who forms the company for our works? The one who recognizes them. And going around in them she finds our palpitating love for her, that yearns for her company in order to give and to receive love. In fact, when you go around in our will in order to find our works and recognize our love and place yours there, I feel drawn so much that as if always I await you in every work in order to enjoy your company, your cortege, and I feel as repaid for what I have done and suffered. And when sometimes you are late in coming, I wait and place myself on the lookout from within my works in order to see when you are about to come, so as to enjoy your sweet company. Therefore be attentive. Do not make me wait. February 10th, 1934, Volume 33. One who lives in my divine will is raised in its arms, which with its strength form her, the little victor. She is the little queen who, with her Jesus in her heart, repeats his life. I feel myself the little daughter, but so little that I feel the extreme need that the divine will, more than my mother, carries me in its arms, feeds me the words, administers to me the motion to my hands, sustains my step, forms for me the heartbeat in my heart and the thought in my mind. Oh, divine will, how much you love me! I feel your life re-pour into me in order to give me life, and how it is in expectation of wanting the atoms of my actions in order to invest them with its creative strength and tell me, the atoms of my daughter match me because they possess my invincible strength. But while my mind remained surprised in seeing the loving and maternal inventions of the divine will, my always lovable Jesus, who is always on the lookout in order to be spectator of what the divine volition does in me, told me, "My little daughter, you must know that my supreme volition looks at one who wants to live in it as its birth, who wants to grow in its arms with its maternal cares, and as it sees that its tiny one wants to give of herself with her little works in order to tell it that she loves it, this divine mother clasps its daughter to its bosom and fortifies with its strength the motion, the word, the step of its daughter. This strength invests everything. It transforms her, and although she is little, she sees herself little and strong, little and victor, and this mother takes enjoyment in letting itself be conquered by its little daughter. In fact, this creature sees herself strong in the love, strong in the suffering, strong in the operating. Strength is the halo of this creature. She is the invincible one before God and over herself. Her weaknesses and passions tremble before this little victor. God himself smiles and changes justice into love, into forgiveness, before the infantile strength of this creature. It is the strength of her mamma, her perennial care, that renders her strong and invincible. Therefore, if you want to be victor over everything, grow in the arms of my will. It will pour itself out in you, and you will feel its palpitating life in you, and it will raise you in its likeness, and you will be its honor, its triumph, and its glory. So I continued to think about the divine will, and before my mind the most beautiful scenes of the divine operation appeared, as all in the act of giving themselves to me, in order to make themselves known, so as to receive my little love, my gratitude, and my thanksgiving. And my beloved Jesus added, "My blessed daughter, for one who lives in my will, all times are hers, and I love to hear, repeated to me by her, what creatures have not done for me, because with so much love I have operated for them, as well as what they have done for me. Therefore one who lives in my will finds creation in act, and she in the azure sky, in the refulgent sun, in the twinkling stars, gives me her kisses, her filial love. And oh, how content I am that in so many created things I find the love, the kisses, the grateful act of my daughter. And I convert all things for her into joy, into defense, into her property. Oh, how beautiful it is to be recognized, loved in those same works, because we have done them, because we have loved. She finds the little epic of innocent Adam, and together with him she gives me his innocent embraces, his chaste kisses, his love of son. And oh, how happy I feel because I see my paternity recognized, loved, honored. Oh, how beautiful it is to feel myself father, and as such feel myself loved by my children. And I exchange my kisses, my paternal embraces, and I give to her as right of her property the infinite joy of my paternity. What will I not give to my children after I have been loved and recognized as father? Everything. I will not deny them anything, and they will give me the right, the joy of my children. I do not know how to deny anything to one who lives in my will. If I could do this, I would deny it to myself. Therefore I give everything, and she repeats for me the scenes of giving me everything. Therefore in it there are exchanges of works, reciprocal love that forms such moving scenes as to form the paradise of God and of the soul. Oh, thousands and thousands of times blessed is one who comes to live in the celestial sojourn of my will. You must know that one who does the divine will enters into it as queen, and as such she comes before us, courted by all our works. In fact, she makes hers the conception of the Virgin, and uniting herself with her and with us, she gives us what we gave to her, and what she gave to us, and we feel ourselves given the love, the glory of the immense seas with which we gifted this Virgin, and moving all her acts again as if she were repeating them in act for us. And oh, what abysses of grace are renewed between heaven and earth! The soul in our will places it in the condition of letting her act as repeater of its works, and while she repeats them, it gifts she who has given it the occasion. And since the creature is incapable of giving us everything in one act, what is formed in one single act by us, her littleness spaces out in our will, and now she takes one of our works, and now another. And with the dominion that our will gives her, she descends in the incarnation of the Word. And oh, how beautiful it is seeing her invested by his love, impearled with his tears, adorned with his wounds, possessor of his prayers. All the works of the Word surround her inside and out, and what is more, convert for her into joys, into beatitude, into strength, with the inseparability of her Jesus, as in a sacred temple that he has in her heart, in order to make her the repeater of his life. And oh, what moving scenes she makes before God! With her Jesus in her heart she prays, suffers, loves together with Jesus, and in her infantile littleness she says, I possess Jesus. He dominates me, and I him. Rather, I give him what he does not have, my sufferings, in order to form his complete life in me. He is poor in sufferings, because being glorious he cannot have them, and I supply him with what he does not have, and he supplies me with what is lacking in me. In fact, in our will the creature is the true queen. Everything is hers, and she makes us such surprises with our works that it enraptures us and forms our happiness, that the creature can give to us in our most holy will. February 10th, 1937, Volume 34. The kingdom of the divine volition will be the kingdom of the Queen of Heaven. her ardent desires and incessant prayers, assaults of love that she gives to the divinity in order to obtain it, how she will place her life at the disposition of creatures in order to give them the grace to make them live of divine will. I felt all immersed in the divine volition. It seemed to me that heaven and earth longed for, they prayed, that its kingdom come on earth, so that one is the will of everyone, and it reign there on earth as it does in heaven. To this the Queen of Heaven unites herself, such that with her ardent sighs she invested everything. She moved, united everything to herself, angels, saints, and the whole of creation, in order to ask with her own sighs and with the divine will itself that she possesses, that the Fiat would descend into hearts and form its life there. But while I thought about this, my always lovable Jesus, making himself seen all love, sighed strongly. His heart beat so much as if it would want to burst, and he told me, "Daughter of my volition, listen to me. My love is about to submerge me. I cannot contain it any more. At whatever cost, even though it must overwhelm heaven and earth, I want that my will would come to reign on earth. To this my celestial mamma unites herself, she who without ever ceasing tells me, repeats to me, 'Son, hurry, do not delay any more. Use your stratagems of love. Act as that powerful God that you are. Make it be that your will invest everyone, and with its power and majesty, united to a love that no one can resist, it take possession of everyone and come to reign on earth as in heaven.'" And she tells me this with such ardent sighs, with inflamed heartbeats, with her stratagems of love of mother, that I cannot resist, even to her adding to me, "My son, son of my heart, you have made me queen and mother, and my people and my children, where are they? If I were capable of unhappiness, I would be the most unhappy queen and mother, because I possess my kingdom and I do not have my people who live with the same will as their queen. And if I do not have my children to whom to entrust the great inheritance of their mother, where will I find the joy, the happiness of my maternity? Therefore make it that the divine Fiat reigns, and then your mamma will be happy, and will have my people and children who will live together with me, with the same will as their mother." Do you believe that to this speaking of my mother that she continuously makes resound to my ear, and that sweetly invests my heart, that are arrows and wounds of continuous love, I can remain indifferent? I cannot do it, nor do I want to do it, more so because she has never denied me anything. Therefore the strength of denying myself to her is lacking to me. My divine heart presses me to content her. You unite yourself with us, and long for and pray that my will be known and come to reign on earth. And in order to greatly confirm you in this, I want to make you hear my sweet mamma. At that moment, I felt her near me, hiding me under her azure mantle, and taking me onto her maternal lap. With a love that I do not know how to say, she told me, "Daughter of my maternal heart, the kingdom of the divine will be my kingdom. The sacrosanct Trinity has entrusted it to me. As they entrusted the eternal Word to me when he descended from heaven to earth, so they entrusted to me their and my kingdom. Therefore my sighs are ardent, my prayers incessant. I do nothing other than assail the most holy Trinity with my love, with the rights of queen and of mother that they gave me, such that what they entrusted to me would come to light. It forms its life so that my kingdom triumphs on the face of the earth." You must know that so great is my desire that burns me, because I feel as if I would not have glory, while I have so much of it that the heavens and earth are filled with it, if I do not see the kingdom of the divine will formed in the midst of my children, because each one of these children who will live in it will give me so much glory as to double for me the glory that I possess. So seeing myself deprived, I feel as if I would not have the glory of queen and the love of mother for my children. Therefore in my heart I always call them, and I keep repeating, my children, come to your mamma. Love me as mother, as I love you as children. If you will not live with that same will that I lived, you cannot give me the love of true children, nor could you know where my love for you reaches. You must know that so great is my love and my ardent anxieties that I want this kingdom exists on earth, that I descend from heaven. I go around to souls in order to see who is more disposed to living of divine volition. I act as spy over them, and when I see them disposed, I enter into their hearts, and I form my life in them as preparation, honor, and decorum for that fiat that will take possession and will form its life in them. Therefore I will be inseparable from them. I will place my life, my love, my virtues, my sorrows at their disposition as a wall of insurmountable strength, so that they can find in their mother what is needed in order to live in this kingdom so holy. And then my feast will be complete. My love will rest in my children. My maternity will find one who loves me as child, and I will give surprising graces and will place heaven and earth in feast. I will act as queen, lavishing unheard of graces. Therefore, my daughter, remain united with your mamma, so that you pray and yearn with me for the kingdom of the divine will. End of February 10th. Fiat.